everybody. Welcome to another episode from the Burnout Brighter crew. I have Matt with me. I know it sounded weird because I was thinking what I wanted to call you guys, but I have Matt with me as always, and I have Darren. And this is our special mental series that's about powering up yourself and giving you lessons and tips on how to help yourself during the holiday season and coming out of it, because mental health is important. And it's one of our cores that we've always talked about, which is why we decided to do a mini series solely focused on it. And today we have the amazing Lindsey, who I'm so thankful for taking time to come onto the show and talk with us today and you guys about building up your self-confidence and how to deal with having low self-esteem. Lindsey, again, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
I know it's listen, when I came up with this idea, I had no idea how many people would actually come on and give some of their time. And it's such a special series to us. So again, I'm probably going to say thank you 50 times, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And let's get started. Lindsey, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? What got you into counseling and kind of what it's been like since you've been doing it, and how you feel like you can help people with gaming? Because I know a lot of counselors and doctors that we have on are using gaming in a way that's helping other people. And I think that's incredible. So can you tell us a little bit about how you go about it?
Yeah, so I'm a little different than most people that you talk to that do counseling, because I'm actually trained as a school psychologist. So I work solely in schools. I'm actually not even licensed to do independent practice because of my degree and the way school psychology works. I've been a school psychologist for about 15 years. I've practiced in Illinois, and now I'm in Colorado. And what was really interesting about moving on to Colorado is that in Illinois, my job was traditional school psychology. So I did a lot of systems work. I did a lot of evaluation for special education. And I really didn't get to do a lot of counseling. So then I started in Colorado, and it was like, oh, here's a caseload of 50 kids. And I'm like, okay, I have to figure out what to do with all these kids.
Oh, okay.
Lindsey, meet the deep end. Go ahead. Have fun.
Yeah, just jump right in.
Most of whom speak a different language than you, because I'm also bilingual, Spanish.
Okay.
So my first school here in Colorado was very heavily English language learners, Mexican American families. So I really just had to kind of throw myself in and figure out what was working. And what I grew to find is that the box programs we have at schools aren't necessarily interesting or fun. Like, if you think of that meme of Steve Buscemi going hey, fellow kids, a lot of them feel like they're written by older people for kids. So they're so dorky. They try to throw in rap songs about feelings, and I'm like,
okay. That sounds very cringy.
Oh, God. Part of me just receded into myself. I just felt the cringe wave over my body.
Yeah. So I really started okay, well, instead of doing, we'll still talk about these topics, but instead of doing this program and having the script I'm reading off of, we're going to play some board games, or we're going to play Uno, but the colors are going to be feeling answers. And then I started finding more of the cooperative games. So I started playing more Forbidden Island, or there's a really cool one for elementary kids called Mole Rats in Space, where you're little tiny mole rats and you have to get to your spaceship and get all your supplies and avoid some snakes. And then I found Geek Therapeutics, and it was kind of this is what I've been trying to do. My big pandemic project was I taught myself how to DM for D&D for my friends.
Amazing.
So I had never played before. I jumped right into DMing.
Nice.
And then I'm like, oh, I really want to do this with my kids, because what we work on is problem solving and communication and decision making and keeping our cool when things don't go our way, and working through that. I'm like, well, this is everything I do in a session as a DM. So it's kind of grown from there, where I started taking the Geek Therapeutics classes and started running D&D groups with my 5th graders last year, and I've expanded it now to my 4th graders and my 5th graders. My huge project right now is I'm doing a whole class D&D with a class of 19 4th graders.
Wow.
That's intense, but I love it.
Seriously.
Because I can't, like, I'm not going to run a game for 19 people. Like, that's stupid ridiculous.
Right.
I'm training 5 of the students to be DMs. So then they have their session on Mondays, and then Fridays we go in and they run their games. We're using the starter set so they don't have to create their own content, and they have kind of rules and simplified things right in front of them. And you would be so, like, I just got off, like, I'm still on the high from yesterday's session because they love it. And the teacher is thrilled because she wanted to do something different than them just playing like Minecraft for schools or being on their screens or playing computers on their free playtime. And every single student looks forward to it all week. Every single student will come up to me at some point during the week and being like, "Are we doing D&D today or this week?" I bought them all their own dice set, so I've started the addiction process with dice with them.
That's incredible.
Start to build your 300 dice collection.
Yeah.
Sorry, 3,000 maybe, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about like I have my cool little dice bag right here, so like I even have like a nice.
That is adorable. That's so cool.
Nice. Yeah.
So like they're starting, like I had one kid yesterday be like, "Don't call me that name. I am Bella today." So they're starting to like respond only to their character's name and really get into character. And then
love that.
I can't get them to leave school afterwards because they're like, "Do you know she tamed a wolf and this is what happened in our session?" So like it's been so fulfilling to see kind of like how they work through problems and how like I can tap into leadership for my student DMs and just how much everyone just loves it.
I think that's incredible. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, no, I just think that's super interesting, especially the way that you've not just brought it to the students, but then involved them in the process of running it as well. So I actually have a quick question before we move on, because I'm super curious about that. Did you identify students who you thought, okay, they would be great DMs, or did you look at it as more of like a scenario where like these students, this might help them as a learning experience, as well as, through something in your counseling sessions that kind of led to it? Or was it kind of like a volunteer? Like, how did you kind of go about just working with those students in the first place to get them to become DMs? Because I find that super fascinating.
Yeah, and I really wanted to avoid favoritism or the teacher picking the students that like, because those are the kids that always get picked, like the nicest ones or the most well-behaved ones. So I actually made it an application process, and they had to write me a letter saying why they would be good DMs.
I love that.
I like that.
And then I was planning on only having 4 groups, but 5 students applied. So I'm like, oh, like I can't just cut one student.
Right.
So then I just took all 5 students, and then it ended up working very well because there are students in the group that are struggling readers. There are students in the group. There are actually 2 students that their families play D&D, so like they're super familiar with it. I have one African-American boy who's the oldest in his family and really cares for his younger siblings, but he's a little bit squirrely most of the time. And he's actually my best DM.
Hell yeah.
And he was one I was like, okay, like this is gonna not be cool anymore pretty quick. And he is just he's into it. He supports his players. He asks for help when he needs it. He's just the best out of the group. And I thought he was gonna be the one that was like, nah, I'm sick of this. But he is just amazing. And then I have a girl that's LGBTQ that applied. So, I mean, I think it's really strong for her too when we go through like a session 0 and go through what our boundaries are and what you want from your players and what you expect from your players. So it ended up working out just perfectly. One of the DM's fathers also plays, and he got really excited about the project. So he comes in and helps run on the Fridays when we're all running. And then my speech therapist is one of my good friends, and she comes in and helps when she can too.
That's so cool. I think
Mhm.
one of the things that I'm so amazed about is like not even thinking about it, but D&D is such a diverse game. It's such an
Mm-hmm.
inclusive game.
Mhm.
And I think I would be super excited if I was in 4th or 5th grade and you're allowing me to create my own character and then act out this character and then it's all part of the game. And
Mm-hmm.
it's incredible that your school allowed you to bring that in, because I know when I was going to school that would not have been a thing. Like
Yeah.
they would have been like
Yeah.
nay nay. So I
Yeah.
love that kudos to your school as well for what? Kudos to
Sorry, that
your
caught me off guard.
oh nay nay.
Yeah.
Kudos to your school as well for like allowing you to go in
Mm-hmm.
and use something that you also really enjoy. And I'm sure that's transferring to your students. Like you're excited about it, so they're also picking up on that, and that's really, really cool. Like
Yeah.
I love that.
And I really appreciate that I got the chance to try. We did, like, I was a little bit afraid because, like, when I said I started playing, my mom was like, isn't that a little dark? And then when I tried to explain it to my principal, she's like, I don't know. And then
Mhm.
just like talking about some of the aggression or violence in the game, like you are fighting monsters, but like when you frame it as we're fighting monsters, and one of our rules as a group is there's no PvP, like we don't fight each other. Um,
Yeah.
so that kind of really sold it. I was expecting to get some of our permissions back or get some parents back being like, no, I don't want my kid to do this.
Mhm.
But I really haven't. Like,
Oh, that's
none of
good.
them. And like 90% of the parents, when I get to talk to them, are so excited that their kids are playing this.
That's
That's
so
amazing.
good. And the
Mhm.
fact is that with D&D, you can kind of cultivate it, right? So that
Yeah.
it's not so negative. So I think that's
Mhm.
one of the things that's really great about it. Before I jump into the next segment, Matt, Darren, did you guys have any questions? Darren's a huge D&D player, so I wanted to give him a chance to ask anything if he had any questions.
No,
Awkward
see, the thing is, you've already answered
away.
all my questions because I think that D&D is such a inclusive thing. You took the words out of my mouth, Destiny. Like
I'm sorry.
in the Dungeons and Dragons group that I'm in, I play with like a very diverse group of people, and the
Mhm.
best part about it is being able to explore parts of yourself, maybe that you didn't know about, or
Mhm.
parts of yourself that you don't normally get to express through the safe space of being another character. And it's like, it's
Mhm.
very empowering and it's very like freeing. And it's
Yeah.
incredible that you're doing that in your school.
Yeah. I see that a lot with my 5th graders because they are getting to the point where they're kind of exploring identities, figuring out who they are, and it's just it's nice to get my 5th grade group is a smaller group. It's just 2 students, but like it's nice to have like the one kid that had his background already 100% worked out like before our first session, and then the other girl who is like, oh, like I can do this, like this is what I'm like, and like, oh, I wouldn't, like, her verbally processing through because she chose a rogue who's a little bit on the chaotic evil side, being like, oh, like, yeah, I'm gonna wait for you, but while I'm waiting for you, I'm gonna go do some highway robbery, like.
Okay.
And just like their little personalities coming out, and it's so fun to see where they grab things from, because they talk about Gravity Falls, and they talk about Stranger Things and all this media now that portrays D&D, and then they bring in their own interests from their anime interests. And like at my groups last year, I really had to stop them from using all the Naruto spells. Like, no, I used my fire shuriken and it did 3,000 damage. I'm like, you can't just do that, guys. Like,
This is a Rasengan free zone, everyone. No Rasengan's allowed.
I love that.
yeah.
No, I do. That's so incredible. Like,
One of the students yesterday played the whole game in Kakashi cosplay. So I'm like, okay, like.
Kakashi is they though. I can't even like be upset about that. I love that character. But one of the things I wanted to say really quick before we moved on is like all of us were teachers at one time in South Korea. So like
Okay.
I know it must be super rewarding to see your kids so engaged, and it must be like, yeah, like just so rewarding to see your kids engaged in and having a really positive outcome. And I just wanted to know, like, from a teacher's perspective, like, what do you kind of want to do moving forward? Like, are you hoping to just get like more kids into it, or is this still like something that you're like testing the grounds on? Like, do you have any more ideas for what you kind of want to do? Is it going to expand from D&D, or just are you going to keep it more like this?
I need to increase my confidence in my DMing skills, just because I'm fairly new to it. What I want this group to move towards, if we finish the starter set module, is kind of creating their own content and seeing how that goes. What I really My next goal for this is to be able to collect some data on the impact of this for the kids and the teacher and the classroom community as a whole, to be able to bring this to organizations and cons and conferences to say, we don't have to stick to something like second step. We don't have to stick to something like zones of regulation. This is effective too. And these are effective ways you can treat kids too. That's really my next goal, is to get that data set and figure out how to collect that data set when everything is kind of so fuzzy and like
Right.
non-quantitative, to be able to convince like the National Association of School Psychs to be able to let me to present that at a conference.
Well, I hope that you're able to do it. I know you're going to be able to do it. And I'm so happy that you are going about it the way that you are, because I really hate the idea of one size fits all. And there are so many different ways that we can approach helping children. And the idea, I don't know why that's such like a foreign idea to a lot of people. Like what works for one student's not going to work for everyone. And I think just with the parents' responses and your kids' responses, like that is going to show them that, like, look, we can do it this way with things that they're really interested in, and help them in ways that you never thought. Because I think when people think about video games, there's still kind of like this stigma that it's just for entertainment value, not really for anything else. So
and I do a lot of that too. I've had a Wii in my office for the past 4 years. And we do a lot of Wii bowling, because a lot of my kids, I also on my caseload, I have the kids with cognitive disabilities and autism. So I do a lot of gaming with them because it's very hard for them to kind of interact with each other. And I also, because I was lucky enough to get the OLED Switch this year, instead of selling my old Switch, I brought my old Switch into work too. So
Amazing.
we have a Switch. We have a Switch and a Wii, and we have a PS3, but it's not hooked up yet, and I don't have my games for it yet.
Oh my God. I love that you're using your personal things to help these kids. Like, that's incredible. Because I know so many people who are so like about their video games and their, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
So
every time we
sweet.
go to a used game store, I'm like sifting through the Wii games to see like what I can get. Like, they all want to play Pokemon. Pokemon games resale are still so expensive.
Oh, yeah.
But I find things like, Kirby's Epic Yarn for $5, and that has really good co-op. Finding a really cheap Little Big Planet has good co-op. I had a kid a couple years ago who was very, like, kind of the quintessential nerd video game collector at 5th grade, where he was like,
Nice.
I only like Pikmin 2 for the GameCube, and like that's really but like, again, really resistant to talking about feelings. So like, I'm like, oh, hey, I found this copy of Pikmin 2. Like, let's bring it in and play it on my Wii. And then for the first time, I'm hearing him like, oh, like, I need to let you have a turn. I need to like, so those kinds of things are just, they're very anecdotal, but like, it goes back to, if you think about therapy, it goes back to client-centered therapy. Like, you're meeting them where they're at. So that's what I see as most effective with them. And it's really not traditional how we do it.
No, it's not. But I mean, like, tradition's not always the way to go. Sometimes you have to think outside of the box. So we're going to jump into our next segment. But really quick, before we do that, if someone wanted to maybe donate games to you to build up your arsenal, is that possible? Because I definitely have a bunch of Wii games that I don't even play anymore, and if I wanted to send them to you for your kids, like, is that a thing I could do?
Yeah, I'd love that. Like any yeah.
All right,
Anything I
awesome.
could do to build up my collection and like the stuff I use with my kids for sure. Because right now, like my kids get really frustrated with me because the Switch games I'm using are my personal games.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so I'll forget them at home and they'll be like, "Oh, we wanted to play Switch today." I'm like, "I know, I forgot all the games."
I love that. Oh my God. You know what I would really like afterwards? I'd really like to talk to you about possibly getting games that, like, if you could make a list of games that you think would be great for your students, because
Mhm.
I really believe in what you're doing, and maybe getting some game codes or something for you so that you can use them in your counseling for your kids, because I think that's absolutely incredible. And I'm sure Matt and Darren would agree with me. Like, we have some connections, and I would really love to help you as much as possible.
I would appreciate that so much, and like extend that too to any D&D materials that you think that I could
Absolutely.
use, because man, I spent $100 on starter sets for the kids. So
I'm saying you bought everybody dice. I know that was
Yeah.
probably
the
expensive.
dice
Right.
were the cheapest part because you can
Oh,
get
really?
like, because on Amazon you can get like 20 sets of dice for like $23.
Oh,
Yeah.
did not know that.
So if you
Okay.
just look up dice lot sets on Amazon, you can find it for the dice were the least expensive thing to do.
Okay. Well, we're going to
Wow.
help. We'll
Yeah.
figure out how to help, and we're going to help, because I want your program to, I wish we would have had something like that. So if there's anything that I can do to help
Mhm.
further everything that you're doing, definitely. So we'll talk more after the
Okay.
show. But moving into our second segment, which I have delayed like 5 times, could you give us some information on self-esteem and the fact that you are working with kids? I know there's a lot of what? I know there's a lot of things that like come up with self-esteem issues, and like just watching the media and feeling like down about yourself. How do you
Mhm.
approach that with
A lot of times, well, I really use modeling of mistakes. Um, like I point out all the time that I'm wrong. Um,
Mhm.
like that. Oh, hey, I really did this wrong. I think the big turning point with me is I had a student just really going through high anxiety and shutting down, and he was under a desk, and like it was like the third time that week, and I didn't know what to do, and I just laid down on the floor and said, "You know what, bud? I need help because I really want to help you and I don't know what to do." And that was like the huge turning point in that relationship with him, of me just admitting that vulnerability and being like, I don't know. And sometimes I don't know those answers. And I think it works really well when I'm working with teachers. It works really well when I'm working with kids about it's okay not to know and it's okay not to be okay. And that
Mhm.
to me, I think that's where my own anxiety and self-confidence kind of gets in the way sometimes, because as the school psychologist, when kids are having difficult behaviors, like they look at you like, oh, hey, okay, like they threw a shoe at my head today. What do you do? And I'm like,
Mhm.
it kind of depends. Like, it depends on why they're throwing the shoe. Like, give me more information, give me processing time. And that's one of the things I've learned in my own practice is I have to be really clear about, like, I want to help you. I want to give you an answer. Give me time to think this over and I'll come up with something, because my first idea probably isn't going to be the right one.
Right.
Mhm.
I
I
love
think
that you're
that's
vulnerable. Sorry,
yeah.
I just wanted to say that I love that you're being vulnerable with your kids. I think that's important, because as you're young and you look to adults, you think they don't make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really great. And I love that that was the turning point for you and this child's relationship. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree because I think it's so easy, especially working with a lot of adults, and a lot of adults when I was growing up, they, like you said, they were perfect, right? Like they made no mistakes. They would never admit to mistakes. It would never,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether you knew that they were wrong or not, that conversation was never a productive one.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to look at a child with respect and say, you know what, I messed up, or I'm wrong, or I'm sorry, I think it's such a fundamental way to help them
Mm-hmm.
understand that they're allowed to make mistakes and they're allowed to mess up, and
absolutely.
especially in a school environment, which it's such just like there's so many people at the same place that you're seeing every day. And we've had this conversation before, but especially with social media, you just see a lot of the best side of a person. And I feel like that deeply messes with my own confidence issues, right? Because all I see is this person being successful or being good, or they did well on the test. And it's like, why can't I do all those things?
You start comparing yourself. Which
Yeah.
is really
all
unhealthy.
the time. And honestly, like, I'm here to say, like, I struggle with that weekly. Like,
Same.
it comes up weekly, and I work very closely. This is the first time I've actually had a partner in my school of another mental health professional. So for a long time, like, we're so understaffed. Like, it's not unusual. It's rare if you get a school by yourself, like a school 5 days a week, and you don't have to bounce between schools. It's even rarer if you have more than one mental health person in a school. And I'm lucky enough that I have a full-time social worker with me who is actually also ended up being one of my best friends. Aww. So, just by luck, we live a block away from each other.
Oh, that's nice.
That's amazing.
And I was so nervous because I'd never worked with anyone before, and I can be a little hard-headed and stubborn. But it's really nice to have that person to bounce ideas off of. Yeah. But it's also then sometimes hard when I see her she's 10 years younger than me, really early career, and do all these things right when I feel like I'm messing up, and I'm like, why are you getting it right? Like, why can't I be good?
Yeah.
So how do you start breaking that negative self-talk? Because I feel like a lot of, like, at least from personal experience, a lot of my own, self-confidence issues comes from this negative self-cycle that I tell myself. I'm not good enough, therefore they are better than I am. Why can't I be good enough? I'm not. And it's just a cyclical cycle of just like, of this negativity that just furthers and festers. What's kind of the first step in starting to break that? Like, if you have a student who you see is going through that same kind of cycle, what's kind of the first step into just, not doing it anymore?
I think, building that relationship is the most important thing between you and the student, or you and your coworkers. Really having that person or to do some of that reality checking CBT work with, of like, this is the thought I'm having. I know this is not a true thought. I've been really good at working with Audrey, my social worker, and being like, this is what my brain is telling me. I don't know if and my statement as always is, I don't know if this is in my head or if this is real.
Right.
Okay.
So help me challenge this thought. And then just teaching kids to do that too. But before you can get kids, because that's really scary and really that's really hard to admit that, like, I might be having a thought that's not real.
Right.
You really need to have that relationship with the students or your clients before you can get to that kind of deeper work of,
so creating that safe space, and so they can feel comfortable enough to say. And I think that's kind of why we more often tell our friends or our coworkers that we've built a relationship with when we have those self-doubts. So I think that's really, it's probably a little harder as an adult trying to come down to that level with a child, right? Because they'll always kind of see you as an authority figure. So what's a way that you kind of get down to that level so that they can talk to you in a way that's comfortable? Like, how do you create that safe space for them?
I do a lot of exploring what their interests are, and I mean, even going so far as, even if it's something like I'm not interested in. I had a kid once that was obsessed with Steven Universe, which I know I really need to watch, but I haven't.
It's so good.
I know. I'm really picky about like animation styles, and that style kind of like, but I know the content is so good. It's kind of like, my husband won't watch Avatar: The Last Airbender because he doesn't like the way it looks, and it's my favorite show.
I totally get that. I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
So learning more about that, or asking them more about that, or tell me why you think this is so great, and then building off that. I do a lot of work with Disney movies or videos, so that first, we're not relating it to ourselves, we're relating it to the characters. So like, how is Elsa feeling? What would Elsa do differently?
Okay.
Right.
We just had a whole conversation in Geek Therapeutics about Howl's Moving Castle and how we could use Howl and Sophie. And as like, did you make a problem bigger? Did you make a problem smaller? So I do a lot of that processing outside of yourself first, which again, I think is what D&D and those role-playing games are so good at, is that we're not talking about ourselves, which is hard. And we're not admitting our own weaknesses, which is hard. We're talking about those people.
Right. I think, oh my God, that's such a smart way to go about it. It really is, because I feel like for kids, it's very hard to talk about yourself because you're not really sure of your feelings and you're really afraid of being judged, especially when you're talking to an adult or saying the wrong thing, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes from just your family environment and that whole idea that like you don't ask questions, you do what I tell you to do. And you can't fully really express yourself. I'm not saying all families are like that, but I kind of grew up in a family where it was like, just do what you're told without question. You can't really ask why. And if you ask why, that's talking back, you know? So I think that's really amazing how you're approaching it and how Geek Therapeutics is approaching it, because I would really love for children to feel confident enough to have open dialogue with their elders that they're close to, because those are kind of our first relationships that we're building. And those are the relationships and ideas that we carry into our adulthood that we're trying to overcome and things like that. So I think you're doing an amazing job just from what you're telling us and the response that you're getting from your kids. And you can tell you're very passionate about it and you love your job. And working as a teacher in South Korea and working with certain people who you could tell did not love their job and were not there for the right reasons. Like, I'm so happy that you're doing what you're doing. Like, and I just want to say thank you.
I'm actually really jealous that you guys got to go teach in South Korea before we moved. So my husband taught in Japan. He was
amazing.
He was he worked for one of the language companies in Japan. And before, he was having a hard time finding his first teaching job because teaching jobs are hard to find, especially when you're a first-year teacher.
Right.
And before we found our jobs in Colorado, we were talking about going back to Japan and just teaching in Japan again, too. And I think eventually that's what we want to do. I have a friend over in South Korea right now, too, who went over there. We worked together in my last school district, and she went over there to teach in South Korea. I don't think she's ever coming back.
Oh, wow. You know what? I would be interested in knowing what she thinks of the educational system there compared to the one in the US, because it's very, very different. Like, you cannot be as open. Like, the things you're talking about now are kind of unheard of over there. So yeah, I mean, I guess that'll be another episode, like another show once you get over in Japan. This one's definitely running long, so I want to get to the last segment because it's very important, and we always ask our guests this. Is there a form of media, a video game, or anything that you kind of pick up that's gotten you through a tough time, or one that you just go back to when you need to de-stress or anything like that? Can you share that with our listeners?
Well, my number one go back to game is Skyrim.
Okay.
I've been playing Skyrim for, I don't know, how many years has it been out? Like 20?
Feels like it.
Feels like it. I have probably every copy of Skyrim because I just keep upgrading it.
Right.
Nice.
I don't know if I've ever finished it because of all the side quests, but like that's kind of my go-to game. I also have a very specific... this is so bizarre, but I have a very specific set of anime I watch depending on my mood. So like,
that's not bizarre. Keep going. Yeah. Not at all.
So if I just need something like silly and light, or I'm feeling I'm in a good space, but I need to turn off my brain for a while, then I'm going like Dragon Ball.
Nice. Classic.
If I need like a good school experience, I'll watch something like Azumanga or I burned through Cardcaptor Sakura this year, and I want to go back to it. I love those little slice of life school anime. I've been watching A Place Further Than the Universe, the one where they go to Antarctica.
Oh, okay.
I keep hearing about that one. I haven't started yet. I've heard such good things.
It's super cute. My other favorite one, when I just kind of want slice of life, I've been watching Kakurio Bed and Breakfast for Spirits. And it's a little Yeah, it's a little supernatural, and it's a little slice of life, and there's a lot of cooking in it, and I love food. So that one's super fun to watch.
And nobody animates food the way the Japanese animate food. Like,
No.
you know it's not real, but it gets you so hungry every time.
Yeah. My little aside for that is my husband for Christmas bought me the Final Fantasy 14 cookbook.
Darren and I have it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. The eggs, the Lenoskin eggs are fantastic. I made those over break.
Nice.
So like I really love food stuff anyway, but then if I'm really, really super stressed out, what I really want to watch is Mushishi.
I love Mushishi.
I've watched it through like 5 times.
Same. It's so good.
And I think it's just so quiet. It's so
Yes.
uniform. It's so calm. And I love kind of like the folklore aspects of it. So that's kind of like that's always the last thing I watch before I go to sleep is just an episode of Mushishi to just.
That's perfect, actually.
It's like meditation.
It's so good. I remember watching the second season and being like, are they going to tell us more about the main character? But they don't. You just kind of know a little bit about it, and you're not upset about it. You guys, if you guys haven't seen Mushishi, you should check it out. It is such a chill anime. It's so good. But that is going to bring us to the end of this episode. Before we go, Lindsey, if people wanted to find out more information about what you do or follow your social medias, can you give us some of that information at the end? We're going to put it down at the bottom so you guys can click on it. But yeah, like also because I really do want to like find a way to get more games to you for your kids. So,
and I'll start making a list for you this weekend and I'll email it over to you too.
Okay. Perfect.
I have an Instagram. I don't really use it. I should do more. But the main way to get a hold of me on social media is Twitter. I'm at MabelGirl3, MableGRL3 on Twitter. That's my main social media. I'm there all the time. I respond all the time. So you can find me there. I'm going to be starting a blog about the D&D project with my 4th graders. That's my big project for this weekend. Coming up with a snappy title. So tweet me any snappy titles too.
All right.
Titles are not my strong point.
Oh my God. Okay.
So I'll make sure I email that over to you too. My email address is LF as in frog, Grove, my last name, GROVE 1 @gmail. And if you have questions or suggestions or ideas, you can always get a hold of me there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us
Thank you.
and with our listeners. So guys, you heard that. And also, whenever she gives me that list, I will be putting that on all of our social media. So if you have any games that you feel like you want to donate or just you want to help out in some way, we are going to get this together. We're going to make it happen because I just think it's incredible. And if we can like put this like in more schools, that would be great as well. But this is going to be Burnout Brighter and Lindsey signing off for today. Thank you guys for listening. Lindsey, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day. It has been amazing talking to you.
Oh, please. I'll come back anytime. I feel like you guys are my new best friends.
I can't believe I didn't even invite you back. Please, you're going to come back. We want you back. And we're going to talk more game stuff. Anime stuff. But,
I'll brush up on my personas. So
Matt is going to be...
Lindsey?
Look at him.
Don't get me started. We're going to be here all day.
But all right, guys, this is us saying bye. And please stay tuned. We're going to have more episodes. All right. Deuces.
Bye. Everyone, we hope you have been enjoying Mental Health Power Up as much as we have. These conversations are incredibly important and we very much appreciate your time. But these conversations aren't the only thing that we're doing, Destiny. What is the second part to this?
Guys, the second part is pretty baller. So we are going to be asking you guys to donate money and share the information about the podcast, but specifically about Guardians Mental Health. They're this great organization that uses geek culture, the things that we absolutely love, comics, gaming, video games, to kind of help people who are struggling mentally and
Mhm.
in a therapeutic way. And they put together these kits that they send out, and you don't have to pay for these kits. This is one of the most amazing things about what this
Mhm.
organization is doing. They're sending out these kits, but obviously it takes money to print the materials, to get everything put together. And that's why we're raising money for them, because we want to help them so that they can help more of you guys. And Matt has got some amazing details about what you can win if we reach certain tiers.
That's right. You just need to donate to be entered. There is no amount that is too small or too large. Whatever you're able to do, $10 is what it costs to make these kits. So if you can do that, fantastic. If you could do absolutely anything, we would appreciate it. As we hit different stretch goals, we are going to be giving out different amazing gifts that we have for some amazing people that we're working with. So please hop over to that link, take a look. If you can donate, please do so. And you might just win something cool for yourself as well, because again, every little bit can make a difference in someone's life. So we thank you for taking the time to do so. If you can, if you can't, Destiny, if somebody can't donate, what else can they do to help?
They can just share the information, share it to
Mm-hmm.
your social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you have like a place that you like to interact with people online, share that information. And one of the things that I wanted to say, and I know Matt and Darren feel the same way, is we just want to thank you guys,
Mm-hmm.
because for each one of you that shares or donates, I'm just going to say it prematurely. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. This is so
Mm-hmm.
important to us, and it's important to our listeners, and it's one of the main reasons why we even started the podcast. Like, not only was it about gaming, but mental health has definitely been a strong core that
Mm-hmm.
we've always wanted to talk about. So this is our first time doing it. We're super excited. We hope you're excited, and yeah, donate, share the information, win some prizes, but most of all, just do it from the bottom of your heart. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, the prizes are just kind of like icing on top of the cake. But
Exactly. So please be there for one another. Help us reach other people who might need to hear some of this, because we know how much it's helped us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Like Destiny said, we'll see you on the next one, everybody. All the links will be in the show notes below. Check it out. Bye.